Kornheiser. I saw a video of that on MooTube.
Tell you what, if a cow got out of his trailer in Texas yesterday or today, it might freeze or slip slide on the snow if you're near the Gulf. It was 25 degrees when I landed in Dallas last night.
There are no snow plows in Louisiana and Texas, I don't think.
In Florida.
You got to live with that snow till it melts. Yeah, you got to live with it. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, 3 new Baseball Hall of Famers. An 11-year-old gets a big offer from the Pirates, and Brian Windhorst joins us from Paris. But we begin today with the New York Jets hiring a new head coach. Aaron Glenn comes over for the Lions, where he was defensive coordinator, to lead the team for which he played defensive back for 8 seasons. Meanwhile, former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson was formally introduced as the head coach of the Bears. Wilbon, where do these hires put the Jets and the Bears, and where do they leave the Lions?
Well, Tony, let me deal with the Lions first, because this is not uncommon for a team that won 14 or 15 games to lose their coordinators. It usually happens after they win a Super Bowl. And the Lions didn't get anywhere close to that. And you're just like, oh, my goodness, they were building, and now people come in and pick them apart. This happens, famously, when the Bears won the Super Bowl in '85, they lost Buddy Ryan. Now, the thing is, the great Bear defense gave up fewer points the next year without Buddy Ryan. So people do emerge. Assistant coaches, younger assistants, unproven assistants, less famous assistants do emerge, and maybe that'll happen to the Lions. But I don't know where it leaves the Jets, because I don't study the Jets, and the Jets are always overstated and overrated. As you point out to me almost every year, people go crazy. Yes, Mike Greenberg. The Bears ought to be better. The Bears need someone to coach the offense and to work with and coach and develop Caleb Williams. They've invested everything in him, and now you cover that investment by bringing in a guy that people around the league feel has one of the great offensive minds in the league. So you bring him in, that Bear offense, it better get better right away.
I don't want to throw damp water on this thing, but for the last 10 to 12 years, I think the Bears and the Jets are always hiring new coaches, and then they're firing those coaches, and then they're hiring new coaches, and Saleh and Eberflus were just the latest ones in this particular trend.
It's true.
You know, I don't know about the Bears, but I don't think the Jets have been to the playoffs in 50 years. It seems that way anyway. So Ben Johnson gets a good young quarterback, and he gets good receivers. Will he have success? I don't know. Nobody else has had success, and they've had offensive guys. Aaron Glenn played for the Jets, so he knows the pitfalls in the system. He knows everything about the system, and it is said that he particularly wanted this job. And all I would say to him is be careful what you wish for, because these places have been sinkholes. In terms of the Lions, you're right. They may lose a little, but they didn't lose players. Players determine whether you win or whether you lose. And famously, I'll just give the Patriots statistics. 2004, they lost Crennel and they lost Weiss, their defensive and offensive coordinators. The next year, they were 10-6. The next year, 12-4. The next year, 16-0 in the Super Bowl. You may take a small hit. You don't have to take a big hit.
True, Tony, but let me just add quickly. Coaches determine, particularly in pro football, whether you win as well. The Bears have had players. They've had some Hall of Fame players, and yet they don't win. They need to be coached adequately, coached well. Since Lovie Smith was allowed to leave or fired after a 10-6 season, the Bears have not been adequately coached, not even well coached. So you're right about what has happened over the years. Nothing with all these hirings, I hope. We're all hoping in Chicago this time's different. Let's move to the newest members of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Ichiro is in, finishing 1 vote short of unanimity. CC Sabathia made it comfortably with nearly 87% of the vote. And Billy Wagner made it in his last year of eligibility. Let's start with Ichiro, Tone. How do you feel about one of the baseball writers not voting for him?
Yeah, I don't mind that. This is a tradition among the baseball writers. They've been doing it for a long time. They did it for like 60 or 70 years that nobody got in unanimously. And then Mariano Rivera got in unanimously in 2019, Mike. And you know as well as I what happened there. Every baseball writer said, well, there's always going to be someone who votes against him, so I'll vote for him. And then he gets in unanimously. You can't tell me that Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and Ted Williams shouldn't have been unanimous, that Cal Ripken and Derek Jeter shouldn't have been unanimous. That's a quirk of the baseball writers. I'm not going to start ranting about that. It's not like Ichiro missed by one vote to get in. He got in on the first ballot because he's a great hitter who I think had 262 hits one season, which is the record ever. So it's not a big deal. I would mention this about CC Sabathia, and I'd ask for your comment about it. He got in on the first ballot. I don't think that would have happened 30 years ago. But right now, he's sort of one of the last of the great durable starters. He finished with 251 wins. Only one guy, Justin Verlander, has more of active pitchers. He's got 262. And Kershaw's getting in and Scherzer's getting in, and they're not coming close to 251.
Yeah, on the back of that, Sabathia does seem like the last of a generation. I mean, and so to reward that to me, I personally felt, we talk about starting pitching on this show a lot in the fall, I was thrilled about that. Ichiro, I'm of two minds about this Ichiro situation and unanimity, Tony. We make too much of it every year, we meaning just the general sports talkers, know-it-alls. But also, it makes me angry that some dope wants to call attention to himself and he finds the need to do this. And I just, I would be snarky with baseball writers, many of which I've been close to, one of which I was for a brief period of time. It annoys me, like Cal Ripken, you mentioned, Ken Griffey Jr., these guys should have been unanimous, and they were 3%, 4%. Tom Seaver was up there years ago. It's stupid. It's time for that tradition to end. And yet, Ichiro's in comfortably on the first ballot where he should be.
I actually find it charming. I do. So we disagree on that. Our next story is fabulous. It's about an 11-year-old kid in Los Angeles who has a baseball card of Pittsburgh pitcher and Rookie of the Year Paul Skeens. This is a one-of-one card. The Pirates are offering this kid a treasure trove of gifts, including season tickets, behind home plate at PNC Park for 30 years, a meet and greet with Skeens, some autographed jerseys, and a bunch of other stuff for this card. Wilbon, should the kid take the Pirates deal or keep the card for future cash out?
Well, I don't say future cash out. I'm going to say cash out. How about some other stuff, Tony? A softball game for 30 people at PNC Park with coaching from team alums, batting practice and warm up with the team, experiences at the team spring training facility in Bradenton, Florida. I could do without that. If they didn't mention, if the kid was 16, you could say maybe dinner with Kendall Jenner, and that might really, weigh. No, because if you can trade this for $1 million and go buy something and invest and put some money away, then no. I mean, the Pirates seats, are they worth that much? Really? Yeah, I mean, for 30 years, you got to see that many Pirate games? Or you going to, be on the phone every night trying to unload Pirates? It's a beautiful ballpark, and the setting may be the most beautiful. The setting, it's not Fenway or Wrigley or, Giants, whatever the Giants are playing in San Francisco. But that's a lot of games to see for the Pirates. Not enough. I'm selling. So I'm keep it and sell.
If I had this card, I would take the Pirates deal because I'm old and because I'm economically okay. This is an 11-year-old kid. 11-year-old kid in Los Angeles who may not care about games in Pittsburgh, may not care about training camp in Bradenton, Florida, and may want straight cash homie. If I am the parent of this 11-year-old kid, I am trying to play the long game. I'm wondering, because if Skeens becomes an all-timer, this card is going to be worth millions in the plural if that happens. So I'm going to go to some guy who understands baseball, how it works. I'm going to try and get a price point. I want to know, do I sell now? How long do I hold on? At what time do I have to dump it? Because I want to make sure that my 11-year-old kid has enough money to go 4 years to Northwestern, the most expensive college in the country, as you well know.
You've been waiting to use that. You've been waiting on that one.
Straight cash homie. Let's take a break. Coming up. We have some NBA questions for our great friend who has somehow pulled off a trip to Paris, ESPN senior NBA writer Brian Windhorst. And wearing the gloves and the hat, it makes it look like it's terrible weather there, but you told us it's in the 40s, not like in Washington where it's in the O's. Let's start with this. The Warriors lost to the Celtics by 40 on Monday. Wilbon continues to agitate for Golden State to trade for LeBron. Brian, how realistic is that?
Okay, it's a great conversation piece, and I do think it's a debate that could be had on a real level at some point. But we have Steph Curry coming out and saying this team should not do anything desperate, and frankly is in lockstep with his front office on that. Also, LeBron continues to want the Lakers to upgrade their roster. He made his annual January plea. You could almost take a poll or take a lottery onto what day in January. If you pick January 21st, you made it this year, about the Lakers upgrading their roster, not him leaving, and he's got a no-trade clause. So I do think Wilbon is presenting something that would be very interesting, and I'm not saying it wouldn't get, brought up down the line, maybe in the summer, but there's no indication now that either team or either player are interested in that happening.
That's too bad. Let LeBron upgrade a roster by going north to San Francisco. And if people think that you can't live one place and play another, just check with Wilt Chamberlain, who played in Philadelphia while living in New York City. Did it at least, as Tony knows, for a year, but we digress,
and Wilt didn't
Brian,
have a G5.
He didn't have a G5. He sat in the back seat of other teammates and rode to New York. Again, I heard about that. Tony lived it, but that's another story for another day. I'll keep begging. In the meantime, if we're talking about trades and possibilities, the Suns, Brian, is they're dealing for 3 first-round picks from Utah. Is that a clear indication that they really are chasing Jimmy Butler? And even if they are, is there anything serious there?
Absolutely, they are chasing him. They're trying to make it happen. And to do so, they made one of the most strange trades I've ever seen in the NBA, to trade 1 first-round pick for 3 kind of bad picks. I've never seen anything like it. But just because they made this deal, I don't think they're anywhere close to actually pulling it off. I think there was an implication that, man, if they did this kind of crazy trade, they must be close. From what I understand, they are not. And the best way I can sort of make this clear is, picture that first-round pick they traded as like a $20 bill, and they got like 2 5s and a 10. And they have to use a 5 to pay this team off and another 5 to pay this team off in the 10. But they don't need 20 guys. They need a 50. And so, to get somebody to take Bradley Beal and then to acquire Jimmy Butler, you need more than the chump change. And so I don't think that they're there. I wouldn't rule it out because I've been around long enough that I would never rule anything out. But the idea of getting Bradley Beal with a no-trade clause somewhere and then still having enough left over to go get Jimmy Butler, it's a very, very high bar. Jimmy definitely is interested in it. The Suns are working every day to make it happen. I'm just real skeptical they can pull it off.
Trade deadline talk is so much fun. Too bad the economics are such now that there probably won't be any big trades. Another trade question, Brian, about Zach LaVine this time. He's averaging nearly 30 in the month of January. Is there any chance, with all the money still owed to Zach, that the Bulls can find a partner to deal him to particularly a contender before the deadline?
Wilbon, 2 years ago, when the rules were different, they didn't have these aprons and things, I think Zach would have been traded. He is arguably playing the best basketball of his career. Maybe he's extremely motivated to get out of Chicago by playing that basketball. But yeah, as you mentioned, the amount of money left on his deal, to trade a player these days who makes $45, $50 million like he does, it's just incredibly difficult. I do think it's possible. I do think, especially if Bradley Beal and Jimmy Butler are on the move as part of a trade, then all of a sudden you could put LaVine in that trade, and now we're talking about a 3, 4, 5-team deal where LaVine could move. I do think that's been under discussion. But again, I'm one of these guys who says a 3-team trade is a no-team trade, because getting 3 teams to agree is incredibly hard. Now we're talking about, with these new rules, and more teams. So the answer to your question is yes, but I would say again, unfortunately, unlikely if you want to see Zach LaVine on the move.
All right, I will get you out of here on this after I make this brief statement to tell Wilbon that Wilt Chamberlain could not fit in the back seat of any car. Okay, not in the back seat. Forget that, not in the back seat. All right, Brian, you're in France for Victor Wembanyama's return there, and the Spurs and the Pacers will play there twice. What has the experience in France been like for you?
So this is a really big week this week. It's Fashion Week, which, I'm sure Wilbon is very much on the trends. It's men's autumn wear. So I know Wilbon is keeping an eye on that.
Yes.
It is right now, there's a huge Champions League match in soccer between PSG and Man City going on. If you hear horns go off, it means PSG has scored. But it's Victor who's on the side of buildings here. This is an incredibly exciting thing for the French fans. For these two games, the NBA sold tickets to people from 53 different countries who are traveling in to see this. This is a very big deal here. The game itself is not that big on the NBA calendar, but it matters a lot to Victor. He's taking his teammates to some of his favorite restaurants. For you, Wilbon, Les Altiers de Robuchon was the restaurant that he took them to on Monday. The langoustine and linguine I can recommend is excellent, but he had the caviar and he loves truffles. But it's been a big week for Victor. He's really enjoying it, and I suspect we'll be seeing more pilgrimages here for Victor over the coming years. He's such a major name.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to have you on. Thank you.
That's great, Brian. Zania, 56, so 46.
Bonsoir, mon amis.
The chore jackets I particularly am in love with.
Let's take one last break, but still to come, the Patriots appear to be bringing...
Tất cả các bạn đã quay trở lại với kênh YouTube của mình. Video ngày hôm nay mình lại làm những cái video tô mổ để gửi tặng tất cả các bạn đây. Đây là những đồ vật, con vật của mình chuẩn bị tô mổ để gửi tặng tất cả các bạn. Đấy. Những sản phẩm của mình rất chi là nhiều, rồi. Và không thể thiếu được hộp xăm màu của mình này các bạn ơi. Hộp xăm màu giúp mình tạo ra những sản phẩm tuyệt đẹp. Và bây giờ các bạn cùng theo dõi mình tô mổ nha.
Bây giờ mình sẽ tiếp tục tô nhá.
YouTube của mình. Video ngày hôm nay mình lại làm những cái video promo để gửi tặng tất cả các bạn đây.